She was sitting on the edge of the bed, twisting her hair up with a rubber band the way she always did when she was pretending not to think. The late afternoon light slipped through the curtains, cutting her in half. One side gold, the other shadow. I'd never been in her room before. It smelled faintly of coffee and something warm, like worn linen. I was just there to help fix her son's old guitar amp. Or that's what I told myself. But he'd gone out, and she'd said, "You can leave it here if you want." I could have left. I didn't. The air between us felt strange, still. Her laugh from downstairs still lingered, soft but distant, as if she'd shut it off once we came up. She kept adjusting the sheet on the bed, smoothing it with her palm though it didn't need it. Her hand moved slowly, like she was stalling. "Don't worry about the mess," she said finally, glancing at me for a second. I wasn't expecting company. I shrugged, pretending to tune a string that wasn't even on the neck. "It's fine." Her eyes caught mine for a moment too long. She smiled, then looked down, that kind of smile people give when they realize they shouldn't have smiled. The silence after that was heavier than it should have been. There was a small sound, her wedding ring clinking against the wooden bedpost as she reached for something on the nightstand. She froze. I did too. I don't think she meant to touch me. Her fingers brushed my wrist as she passed me a cup of water, light as a breath, but it stayed there. The print of it, the idea of it, long after she pulled back. I tried to speak, something casual, but it came out wrong. "Thanks." She nodded, her lips pressed tight, like she'd just remembered she was supposed to be someone else. Then she laughed, that same soft, practiced laugh she used at the dinner table when her husband made a joke that wasn't funny. Only this time, her eyes didn't follow it. I noticed the small details then. The tiny scar near her temple, the faint lipstick mark on the rim of her glass, the way her breath caught before she spoke again. "You should probably head down soon," she said. But she didn't move. Neither did I. The light outside had shifted to gray, and for a second, I thought I saw her hand twitch again, as if to reach out, or as if she'd stopped herself from it. Somewhere in the house, a door closed. Maybe her son will come back. Maybe the wind. She exhaled, slow and quiet, and stood up, brushing invisible dust from her jeans. "Let's not make it weird," she said, almost to herself. But it already was. She walked past me, her shoulder grazing mine, soft, deliberate, accidental all at once. And the scent of her shampoo followed after, clean and warm and entirely her. I sat there a while, pretending to tighten a screw that didn't need tightening, waiting for my pulse to stop pretending to. And even when I finally went downstairs, I could still feel it, the faint ghost of her touch under the table earlier, the part of her laugh that didn't reach her eyes. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. She was sitting alone at the cafe near campus, the one her husband never liked because the chairs were too close together. Her laptop was open, untouched, her hand wrapped around a mug gone cold. She didn't notice me walk in, or maybe she did, and pretended not to. I almost turned back. But she looked up, caught me halfway through the door, and gave that small, polite nod people give when they've decided not to make something a big deal. So I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat across from her. "You don't usually come here," she said, closing the laptop halfway. Her voice sounded light, almost casual, but the way her fingers rubbed the rim of the mug told another story. "Neither do you." She smiled faintly. "Guess we both needed a change of scenery." There was that pause again, the one that sat between us like a third person who refused to leave. I could feel the memory of that day in her bedroom hanging in the air, neither of us naming it, both pretending it didn't exist. "How's the amp?" she asked suddenly. "It works," I said. "You just had the cables in the wrong place." She laughed softly, a little embarrassed. "I always do." Then quieter. "I'm terrible at following instructions." Her words came out small, almost hidden, but they lingered, heavier than they should have. I noticed the way her thumb brushed the inside of her palm, over and over. A nervous habit, maybe, or guilt. Her phone buzzed on the table. She turned it over without looking. A man's name flashed across the screen. I caught it before she could hide it. She noticed. "He keeps calling," she said, almost as if explaining. "We're taking time apart." I nodded, unsure what to say. The words I know almost slipped out, because of course I'd noticed. The empty ring finger. The way she lingered on goodbyes. The silence at the dinner table weeks before. "Sorry," she said, forcing another small laugh. "That's not really your problem." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, She didn't look composed. Her shoulders had dropped, her lipstick had faded, and there was a softness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. I don't mind, I said quietly. She looked up at that. You shouldn't. The corner of her mouth twitched like she wanted to say more, but didn't trust herself to. Instead, she reached for her coffee, then paused. Her hand stopped halfway, fingers tightening slightly, as if realizing how close mine were on the table. Her gaze flicked down. For a second, neither of us moved. Outside, someone laughed. A car horn broke the silence. The world kept moving, but inside, something had gone still. She withdrew her hand, slow, deliberate, careful not to touch, and somehow that restraint hurt more than if she had. I should go, she said, gathering her things too quickly. Her sleeve brushed my knuckles. It felt like static. When she stood, her scarf slipped from her chair. I picked it up, but she was already halfway to the door. Hey, I started. She turned, her eyes finding mine for the briefest, most unguarded second. Keep it, she said. Then softer, I'll get it from you next time. And before I could say anything else, she was gone, leaving her coffee half finished, her chair still warm, and that one promise I wasn't sure she meant to make. The next time, she came to return the scarf. It was late, later than anyone had an excuse to stop by. The porch light flickered when she knocked, 3 quick taps, then silence. I opened the door, surprised. She stood there holding the scarf in both hands like she wasn't sure if she wanted to give it back or keep it a little longer. Her hair was damp, maybe rain, maybe a shower, and she smelled faintly of citrus and something softer. I was passing by, she said, even though my street wasn't on the way to anywhere. I stepped aside. You want to come in? She hesitated. Just for a minute. Inside, the only light came from the kitchen. The hum of the fridge filled the space between us. She draped the scarf over the back of a chair, but didn't sit down. You fixed the amp, she said, nodding at it in the corner. Yeah. Her fingers traced the countertop. You really don't talk much, do you? I almost smiled. You talk enough for both of us. That made her laugh. A small, honest sound that didn't hide behind anything this time. It broke something open in me, quiet but deep. She looked around the room, as if trying to find something neutral to focus on, but there wasn't much. A coffee mug, a half-read book, a sweater on the chair. The kind of things that looked lonelier at night. You live like a student, she said softly. I am one. Her eyes met mine, and she exhaled through a small laugh, shaking her head. Right? Of course. The pause after that felt too long. She looked at the amp again, then at me. You really love music, don't you? I nodded. It's easier than talking. She tilted her head, studying me. You think so? And then, maybe by instinct, maybe by accident, she reached out and brushed a thread off my sleeve. Her touch lingered, her fingers warm, her breath barely audible. My chest tightened. Neither of us moved. Her hand stayed there, suspended in that impossible middle ground between care and crossing a line. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, but the words caught somewhere between my throat and reason. She pulled her hand back, and her voice faltered. You're a good person. I looked at her. You don't know that. I do, she said, almost like a confession. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, a sharp sound that cut the air clean in half. She flinched. The name flashing on the screen was the same as before. She silenced it quickly, her face turned away. He doesn't listen when I say it's over. The way she said he made my stomach twist, not from jealousy, exactly, but something closer to anger I had no right to feel. She noticed. Don't, she said softly. Don't look at me like that. How? Like you see me. The room went still again. She looked down, then forced a thin smile, the kind that's meant to close a door before it opens too far. I should go, she whispered. I nodded, but didn't move to open the door. She reached for her scarf, hesitated, then let it fall back onto the chair. Keep it. It suits this place. She turned before I could answer, her reflection flashing briefly in the dark window, and then the sound of the door closing was louder than it should have been. I stood there for a while, watching the scarf, the faint perfume still clinging to the air, wondering if she'd meant to leave it, or if she just couldn't take another thing that reminded her of what almost happened. She showed up again on a Sunday morning. I was at the cafe this time, at the same corner table where we'd sat weeks ago. I'd almost stopped coming because of her, and maybe that's why she came, because she knew I would. Eventually, she wore a gray sweater, Hair loose this time. No ring, no excuses. She spotted me before I could look away and smiled like we were two normal people who happened to meet again by chance. Mind if I sit? She asked, already pulling out the chair. Sure, I said, though my pulse said something else. The barista called her name before she could speak again. She went to grab her drink. Oat milk latte, 2 sugars, same as before. I watched her cross the room, graceful but tense, like someone who'd rehearsed being calm. When she came back, she set the cup down too hard. The lid clicked. Foam spilled over the edge, a pale ring spreading between us. She reached for a napkin, but so did I. Our hands met. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Her fingers froze under mine, warm and trembling just enough for me to notice. Then she pulled away, muttering, "Sorry." "Don't be." She exhaled, then laughed, a short, shaky sound. "You always say that." I didn't answer. She looked at me for a long time, the kind of look that asked more questions than it had any right to. "You've been avoiding me," she said quietly. "I thought that's what you wanted." Her gaze flicked to the window. I thought so too. There was a small silence, the kind that swelled, that pulled everything into it. The hum of the espresso machine, the clinking cups, all faded into background noise. She ran her thumb over the paper sleeve of her cup, nervous. "It's ridiculous," she said finally. She stopped, shook her head. "Forget it. Say it," I said, before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted to mine. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Her lips parted, then closed again. She looked down at her hands, delicate, restless, and then up again, as if searching for something in my face. "You make it too easy to forget how old I am," she said softly. It landed like a confession. I didn't know what to do with it. My throat tightened, words pushing up but refusing to form. I could only stare, caught between wanting to reach for her and knowing that crossing that inch of space would change everything. She smiled, but her eyes shimmered, fragile at the edges. "That's not a compliment," she added, though her voice betrayed her. "Then what is it?" She let out a slow breath. "A problem." Her phone buzzed again, that same name. She didn't even look this time, just placed her hand flat over it, silencing the vibration like it meant nothing. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the table, close enough for me to smell the faint trace of her perfume. "Jasmine, maybe. You think I'm someone you can save," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, I just don't want you to pretend." Her lips parted as if to answer, but she didn't. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, just for a second, and that second stretched longer than it should have. A barista called her name again, her drink remade, waiting at the counter. She didn't move. Neither did I. Her hand hovered between us, fingers twitching once, wanting, stopping, retreating. Then, in a voice barely above a breath, she said, "If I don't go now, I won't." And before I could say anything, she was on her feet, walking away, leaving the napkin between us, her fingerprints smudged against the coffee ring like something that wouldn't fade. It was her son who opened the door. "Hey," he said, grinning. "Didn't expect to see you. Mom's upstairs. She's just finishing a call." The sound of her voice drifted down the hallway. Low, strained, not the one she used around me. I almost said I'd come back later, but he was already waving me in. "Come on, you can wait in the kitchen." The house looked different in daylight, lived in, not quiet like I remembered. There were shoes by the door, a half-folded blanket on the couch, sunlight catching the dust in the air. The same scarf I'd been keeping for weeks was hanging by the stairs, like it had never left. "Coffee?" her son asked. "Sure," I said, though my stomach was tight. She came down a few minutes later, still on the phone. The moment she saw me, she froze, mid-step, mid-sentence, then turned away slightly, finishing the call with her back to me. Her son didn't notice. "Mom, he's here about the amp, remember?" Her voice was calm when she answered, but her hands betrayed her, clutching the phone a little too tight, brushing her hair behind her ear twice before hanging up. "I didn't know you were coming," she said finally. I texted. Her eyes flicked to the counter. The phone buzzed again, unread messages lighting up the screen. Same name. Her son poured coffee, humming quietly, oblivious. "You two catch up," he said, heading out to grab something from the car. The second the door clicked shut, the silence felt heavier than the walls. She spoke first. "You shouldn't be here." "I wasn't trying to." "I know." She cut in softer this time. "It's just complicated." The word hung there. I hated how small it sounded for what it meant. I nodded, unsure what else to do. My hand brushed the table, tracing the ring of an old coffee stain. She noticed. I could tell because she flinched like the memory of our last cup together had reached her too. He called again? I asked quietly. She didn't look up. He's back in town. I want to talk. And do you? Her silence was enough. Then she sighed, a sound that came from somewhere deeper than her lungs. I told him no, but he knows how to wait for me out. I swallowed hard. Is that what I'm doing? Her eyes snapped up, surprised. You're not like him. Then what am I? She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her voice wavered when it finally came. Someone who makes me forget I already made too many mistakes. The sound of a car door outside broke through the moment. Her son was back. She turned away quickly, as if distance could erase what she'd said. Don't, I whispered. Don't take it back. I'm not, she said, without turning around. That's the problem. The door opened, footsteps echoed. Her son stepped in, holding a grocery bag. You two look serious, he joked. She smiled too quickly, just catching up. He laughed and brushed past, setting the bag on the counter. Good. You should come by more often, man. Mom never talks to anyone. She froze. I met her eyes over his shoulder, wide, unguarded, something breaking open behind them. She looked away first, reaching for a mug just to keep her hands busy. That's enough, sweetie, she murmured. But her voice trembled. And when I left, she didn't say goodbye, just stood at the window, watching the car pull away, her reflection layered over mine in the glass. For the first time, it wasn't silence keeping us apart. It was everything that could happen if we stopped pretending it should. It rained that night, the kind that made the whole neighborhood sound like it was holding its breath. She called first. No words, just a quiet inhale, then, are you awake? I was. I always was when I shouldn't be thinking about her. Can you come over? She asked. Her voice cracked halfway through the question, like she'd already answered it herself. When I got there, she was on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, wearing that same gray sweater from the cafe. Her hair was damp, curling at the ends, rain dripping from the awning onto her bare feet. He showed up, she said, before I could ask. We argued. He left. Her eyes flicked to the street, to the empty space where a car had been. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered. Then, quieter. Or who else to call? I wanted to say me, but that would have made it sound like I'd been waiting for this. We went inside. The house was dim, lit only by the lamp in the living room. The air smelled faintly of rain and her perfume. She sat on the couch, pulling her knees close, hands trembling slightly. I hate that he still gets to walk in like nothing, she said. He decides when to care, when to leave, when to come back. She looked up at me, her eyes wet but steady. And I let him. Every time. I knelt down beside her. You didn't let him tonight. That made her laugh, a small, broken sound. No, I called you instead. Her hand was resting on her knee. I didn't mean to reach for it, but I did. Her fingers twitched, then tightened around mine. Warm. Real. Scared. I don't know what I'm doing, she said. Me neither. Her shoulders dropped, the kind of release that comes when there's nothing left to hide. I keep thinking, she continued, voice thin. If I were younger, if you were older, maybe this would make sense. I shook my head. It already does. She smiled faintly, shaking hers too. You think that now. The rain outside grew heavier, a steady hum against the windows. She looked past me for a long moment, then whispered, I wish I'd met you first. The words hit something deep, not because they were romantic, but because they weren't meant to be. They were regret and longing and truth, all tangled up. I moved closer, slow enough that she could pull away. She didn't. When I brushed a strand of hair from her face, her eyes closed, not in surrender, but in quiet relief, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Say something, she murmured. I can't, I said. If I do, I won't stop. Her thumb traced the inside of my wrist, one small, trembling motion that said everything she couldn't. Then she leaned forward, just enough for our foreheads to touch. Not a kiss. Just contact me. Quiet, deliberate, almost sacred. I can't promise this will end well, she whispered. I don't care. Her breath hitched, and then she pulled back slightly, eyes glistening. You will. Before I could answer, thunder rolled outside. The lights flickered. For a moment, it felt like the whole room had gone still, holding its breath with us. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself again. You should go before I change my mind. I didn't move. Not until she looked at me and said, softer this time, please. So I did. I stepped out into the rain, her warmth still on my skin, her scent in the air. And when I glanced back through the window, she was still there, hand pressed to the glass, not waving, not calling me back. Just there. It wasn't an ending. It was the moment right before one. It's been months. The rain came back last night. Same sound against the windows, same smell in the air. It brought her with it, in memory, if not in body. I caught myself looking at the porch light across the street, half expecting her to be there again, holding that old scarf, half apology in her eyes. But her house looks different now. Curtains drawn. New car in the driveway. Someone else's shadow moving through the kitchen window. I haven't seen her since that night. Sometimes I think about knocking. I picture it clearly. Her opening the door, both of us older in ways that have nothing to do with time. Maybe she'd smile politely, ask how I've been. Maybe she wouldn't recognize the version of me that stopped waiting. But I never go. Instead, I pass her street when I shouldn't. I caught a glimpse of her garden through the fence, the one she used to water barefoot at dusk. The roses came back, wild and stubborn, like they don't care who tends them now. I still have her scarf. It hangs on the back of my chair, the faint trace of her perfume long gone. I told myself I'd return it one day, but some things stop being objects. They become placeholders for what we can't return. I think that's what she was, in the end, not a chapter, not a mistake, but a moment that changed the shape of how I look at people, how I listen, how I wait. Back then, I thought what we had was about wanting. Now I think it was about being seen, really seen, even if only for a brief, borrowed time. She once said, "You'll care later." She was right. I do, but not in the way I thought I would. It isn't regret, not exactly. It's the quiet knowledge that something real can exist even if it doesn't last, that it can end without bitterness and still leave something behind that refuses to fade. Last week, I played a song I wrote after that night. No words, just slow chords that hang and never quite resolve. The sound filled the room, gentle and aching, and for a moment, it felt like she was listening. Maybe that's enough. Sometimes love doesn't need a witness to stay alive. It just needs someone to remember it honestly. When I think of her now, I don't think of the porch or the rain or the touch that almost happened. I think of her laugh, the one she tried to hide when it was real, and how, for a few stolen moments, it sounded like freedom. Maybe that's what we were, not forever, not right, but free. And freedom, I've learned, can feel a lot like love when it's gone. Did this story stay with you? Would you have wanted them to find their way back? Or was it better left as it was? Two people who met at the wrong time, but still mattered? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? Ones that end in peace, or the kind that haunt long after the last word?